Hi viewers, today we're talking to Husna-Tara Prakash of Glenburn Tea Estate. She also runs the Glenburn Penthouse boutique stay in Kolkata as well as the soon to open Glenburn Penthouse Cafe. She conducts heritage walks across Kolkata and she's a major voice in the luxury tourism space in Eastern India and beyond. So hi Husna, thanks for talking to TravelDine for International Women's Day. Could you just tell us very briefly about how you kind of came into hospitality, because I think that's an interesting story.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Amit. Thank you, TravelDine, for inviting me. Mine's a very interesting story, very organically grown into this journey of growing up between two countries. I grew up in England, but my parents were very keen to send me to India when I was quite young to understand where I came from. So I went to an all-girls boarding school called Welham Girls in Dehradun. And I must say those were 6 of the most impressionable and wonderful years of my life. My daughter is there as well right now. So we chose the same path for her, and she's hopefully doing extremely well in school, and Wellham's is turning her into the strong, independent thinking woman that I was lucky enough to become through all of that. After that, I went back to England and attended a sixth form college there, took a gap year out where I backpacked around the world. And that's when I fell in love with a tea planter called Anshuman Prakash. And then even though I went on to Cambridge and did a couple of degrees there, at 25, I decided to give it all up and come to Calcutta and marry into his family. And the hospitality only happened because they were a tea planting family with the most beautiful tea estates, first in Kerala, and then Glenburn came into our hands 20 years ago. And when we saw the property, everybody who visited there said, you need to do something with this. So I had never dreamed of hospitality or anything like that, but the opportunity was there. And given the sort of workhorse that I am, I managed to find the right people at the right time. So this wonderful designer called Bronwyn Latif, who I happened to meet through horse riding actually, and she came and saw the place and fell in love with it too. And before we knew it, we were right into this restoration project of a 4-room old bungalow at Glenburn. And I went off to England during the summer, talked to a few India specialists about sending their guests out to us. And within 2 years, we'd made it to the Tatler Guide to the best 101 hotels in the world. So suddenly from being a science teacher who was passionate about education and teaching, I suddenly found myself running a 4-bedroom boutique hotel that the whole world was talking about. We then added 4 rooms. It became 8 rooms. Then we added then I started doing historical tours of Calcutta because people wanted to learn more about Cal and the city and Bengal. And I fell deeper and deeper in love with Bengal as the place. And then we started our second hotel as well, the Glenburn Penthouse. So it's been, like, as I said, a very organic journey. I always thought I'd be a teacher, but here I am in hospitality about 20 years on. From when we
I don't think anybody had actually done a tea estate stay when you started out. So what was it like? What were the challenges you faced?
I think the challenges weren't that great simply because we had no expectation as to what it would become. And we literally just took each opportunity as we could and just went with it. And I'm reasonably fearless as a person. I always see the glass half full and I rarely say no to a challenge. So it was literally like, let's just keep going. The roads are bad. Okay, let's invest in cars. Let's train our drivers better. Let's insist that people come in our cars. Let's send them a picnic hamper and extra cushions. We're remote. Never mind. I'll write and prepare people and they'll expect the journey and understand it. And I worked with an incredible lady called Bronwyn Latif, who really taught me everything there was to know about hospitality. And it's not that she came from a hospitality school, but we just went at it with a whole outlook as to what would a guest expect, what would they love, what would we love if we were in a hotel like this. And that's how the product was formed. And that's how even today the hospitality is offered to our guests. It's heartfelt and it's sensible and it's practical and it's what we would expect if we were on holiday. We don't have SOPs and rule books and things like that. We just ensure that attention to detail is on every staff member's mind. And sincerity and hands-on application, warmth and gracious hospitality. So that's been my mantra and it seems to have worked.
What is the one thing that you enjoy most about your work?
Um, Working with my team, I've worked with incredible people along the way. Bronwyn Latif, now Sean Kenworthy, who's curating all our meals at the Penthouse, my general manager Faraz, and my manager at Glenburn, Andrew. They're all incredible individuals. Sapphira, Darlene, they've been, along the way, people who've just helped me put it all together. So I've just shown them the way, and they've even though they've had me watching over them like a hawk, they've been able to sort of create and deliver what we wanted to offer to our guests. So that's been, I love working with the team, and also the discovery of Bengal as, I really missed out on my teaching career, and I regret that in many ways even today. But the fact that I'm now leading these tours around Bengal, and every guest I meet gives me another layer of my story, and I'm reading and studying and researching. I think I get a lot of joy out of meeting my guests who are as curious and as intrepid a traveler as I am, and I sort of love the time I spend with them and the work I do with them.
So is there any particular anecdote you can recall, some guest experience which was very moving or something which comes back to you?
I think we've done a lot of interesting historical tours for famous sort of personalities from the history of Bengal. They're sort of great grandchildren who've come searching for knowledge about their ancestors. So that's been quite moving. There was a lovely story about the ancestors of Bishop Cotton who'd come, and they'd asked us to sort of search for his memorial in Calcutta, because he was metropolitan of the city and the Bishop of Calcutta. So there should have been something dedicated to him. But he drowned in Kushtia just before he was supposed to return back to England after his commission out here. So they never found his body. So it was there was never a formal burial. And we searched and searched, and I was working with my cousin and my colleague Devika at the time, and we couldn't find it anywhere. And on the day of the tour, when we took them into St. John's Church, we'd arranged all sorts of meetings with some of the principals of the schools that Bishop Cotton had opened, and other other places in the city associated with him. But when we went to St. John's Church, I was just sort of hanging around the altar, and one of the young boys in the church that has watched me do my tours for many years was hanging around. So I just told him, I said, this family's great-great-great-grandfather was the Bishop of Calcutta, and isn't that nice that they've come back to see the church? And he said, oh, let me come and show you something. So he took me to the altar and pointed at something on the ground, which was another bishop's grave. It wasn't Bishop Cotton's, but because he took me into the altar and beyond where we're normally allowed to go, my eyes fell on the wall to this brass plaque that was terribly polished, and you could barely see the writing, which is why we'd missed it. And on the side, I just caught a glimpse of Edward George, which was his middle name, Edward George Cotton. And I suddenly went closer up to it and realized that was it. And it was actually quite a beautiful brass plaque. So I went running out and called the guests in, and then we had it polished up, and it was just such an emotional moment because we were feeling so bad that we hadn't been able to discover this and research this, and then suddenly we found it. So that was one of the ones that come to mind, but there have been many wonderful interactions.
That was quite amazing. Yeah. Just wanted to ask you, in your properties, do you consciously promote diversity in terms of hiring women for certain roles, or trying to employ them, or work with the local community?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Bronwyn was the amazing woman that is, showed me exactly what I'm doing today, and I continue to consult her for everything. We're opening a Glenburn cafe, and we're looking for a cafe manager, and we were immediately everyone said, oh, let's have a really interesting dynamic woman to be the host and bring people in. We haven't found that woman yet. I'm still searching, and we're supposed to open at the end of the month. So anybody who wants to come and run the Glenburn cafe after listening to me, please do approach us. But yes, I mean, I love working with women. I love their energy. I love their attention to detail. I work with another very strong personality called Noyana Ganguly, who's again my soulmate and colleague when we do our Calcutta tours. And so it's wonderful that all these women have been able to bring so many levels of diversity into the Glenburn story, and they continue to do so. So absolutely.
Advice for women entering hospitality, the industry. I mean, of course, your properties are quite boutique, but but you might have some advice to offer.
Sure. I think just as a woman in general, I've never felt being a woman has held me back. In fact, sometimes it can help. It can help sort of break barriers sometimes with a charming smile and a confident outlook. And I've never felt that it should be something that anybody ever feels is a disadvantage. Women are incredibly hardworking, and they manage to balance things like kids and families and husbands and parents and in-laws and everything alongside their work, and they do it in a very seamless and in a very quiet and unassuming way. And men don't often appreciate that. And I think women should realize that that is their strength. They don't need to shout about it. I'm not a great feminist who likes to shout about equality. I feel we should just lead by example and be the right role model to our kids, and never feel that being a woman is a disadvantage. So to me, that would be my message. Just go forth with courage and conquer the world. Okay. And also don't set expectations. Let doors open. You may think that you want to work in the bakery section, but you may end up at the front desk. You may end up in, like I have, in a career that I never ever expected would happen to me. I hated history in school. I thought it was the most boring subject on earth. So there you go. Although I did have the incredible history teacher, Mrs. Doita Datta. If anybody know her, she was a huge role model in my life, a very strong woman in Welham Girls, and she still is. And I know she's inspired hundreds of Wellamites and people. So, these are the strong women that I've grown up with as role models. It was very easy for me to emulate them as best as I could.
Okay. Can you just briefly tell us just a bit about some of the other stuff you do in Calcutta? I think you're part of some women's study group.
Yes, that's right. I'm the vice president of the Kolkata International Women's Club, and that again is a group of wonderful expatriate women. Not some of them Indian who've lived here all their lives. Some of them who are married into Indian families. They basically all have foreign nationality, which is why they're part of the club. But we raise a lot of money for women's charities in the city, and we meet once a month. In fact, this morning we were at the residence of the Japanese consul general's wife, and we did a beautiful tea ceremony with her. And last month we listened to Karuna Ezra Parekh, another incredible woman's writer, talk about the book that she's just written. So it's a very inspiring platform for women to get together. It's quite intimate. It's not like the very larger women's clubs in other cities. We have about 100 members, and 30 to 40 of them come to each of the events every month. But it was the one way I really got into the city, because when I was married and living here, I didn't really explore the city like some of the expatriate women had. And through making friends with them, they were the ones who first took me walking through the gullies of North Calcutta, and going into markets and places that I might not have gone on my own. And it was a lot of my tours was sort of put together with some of those early women friends that I had in the city.
So if you're not been in hospitality and travel and tourism, what would you have been doing?
Oh, definitely a teacher. As I said, I trained to be a teacher at Cambridge. I worked at a summer camp in America for 3 summers. I contemplated medicine, and I in fact got into 5 of the London medical schools as a grad student after my natural sciences degree at Cambridge University. But then I knew I wanted to come out to India. I was in love with Anshuman and I wanted to move to India. So medicine was seeming like a bit of a long drawn affair outside India. So I went back to Cambridge to take a teaching interview. And again, the lady that interviewed me was so inspiring, Hilary Tunnicliffe she was. And I think she liked me and I liked her, and she offered me the place at Cambridge. And I walked in thinking maybe medicine, maybe teaching, and I walked out thinking I want to become a teacher. And again, it was her inspiring me, and I was very lucky to train under her as well. So I did a lot of my teaching practice under her. So she was again another very inspiring lady in my life. So I would have probably been in teaching. I still have my links with education because I run an education foundation up at Glenburn. We have 64 children in private schools as part of the Glenburn Estate Foundation. And my historical walks and tours are kind of like teaching people about the story of Bengal. So I'm touching upon my teaching, but that was my first love, and I would have loved to have done that had I not got into hospitality.
So are you going to mark International Women's Day in any way? Do you mark it every year?
Yes, there are lots of interesting events happening in the city. I've been invited to speak at one later on in the month. We have an International Women's Day meet that's happening where we're going to be talking about the theme of this year's Women's Day, climate change, and women involved with that. So we've got two very inspiring speakers who are coming to speak to the women on the 12th of March. So yes, we always do celebrate Women's Day. Although, as I said, I'm not a huge feminist, so I would like to celebrate women every day, not just on one day. But it's always good to have a shout out.